beginning to detect a little bit of a pattern with some of the guests that I've had recently on the Reflection podcast. And today's guest is no different. Maybe this has been your experience as well. You kind of know what you're going to do. You're going to be going through life and you go to school, whether it's for academics or athletics or whatever it is, and you go through that, you know what you're doing, you have a passion for it, and then you get out of school and you're going to go into this career and you're going to do this for the rest of your life. And this is what you want to do. This is what you think you're supposed to be doing. This is your purpose in life. And then all of a sudden, God comes along and says, "Have I got something for you?" My guest today is Jamie Crustals, and she is an education specialist at Concordia Seminary. She's someone who helps develop the curriculum for future pastors and deaconesses and other theology students in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. But I think you're going to really enjoy this. You may not know anything about the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod or even the Christian church in general, but her experience of coming through life in being in one direction that she thought she was going to be going in, and God came calling, and now she's doing this. I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation with Jamie Crustals on this episode of the Reflection Podcast. In the pastor's office with me today is Jamie Crustals. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Pastor Blonsky. It's a pleasure.
And Jamie is in St. Louis at Concordia Seminary, my alma mater. In fact, I was just there a couple weeks ago for some orientation and some eye-opening experiences and being a mentor in the online deaconess program. And Jamie kind of helps out in technology is the polite way to put that. But she really does a lot of great stuff behind the scenes. And we'll get to that in a little bit because I think it's so important in today's world. That's what this episode really is how do we use technology to reflect God's light and love? But I wanted to get your biography. And since you know you better than anyone else, why don't you give us a little bit of a biography of Jamie?
Oh, absolutely. So born and raised here in St. Louis, Ed, been here my entire life or in the Metro East area. For any of your listeners that are actually from St. Louis, usually the follow-up question to that is, what high school did you go
Mm-hmm.
to? And so for those listeners, I went to Riverview Gardens.
Okay.
So on the north side of town.
Yep.
I'll say that, I was a first generation college student for my family. And so after completing high school, I was lucky enough to get a sports scholarship to be a dual athlete at Lewis and Clark Community College. I played both soccer and softball there, enjoyed my time thoroughly from there, and transitioned into McKendree, which is over kind of in the Metro East side over in Illinois. I focused strictly on soccer and ultimately got an undergraduate degree in PE and health education. From there, I continued on with my graduate studies. I completed a master's in education. While I was at McKendree, I actually got the opportunity to be an assistant coach for their women's soccer program. And so I learned a lot through that experience and ultimately transitioned from being at McKendree and things like that. Once I earned that graduate degree, I was lucky enough to be offered an adjunct teaching position for their health professions department. And through that, I've been teaching for my alma mater, really, for the past 15 years, give or take, both face-to-face and online. I decided to step away from the role of higher education in that teaching role, and I moved into the public school sector. I worked at a middle school for about 6 years in PE and health and special ed, and was actually their athletic director for quite some time. I was also the head coach there, and so I have a special love in my heart for, the all kids really, but ultimately the fifth through eighth grade middle schoolers themselves. It was during that point in time in my life, I also decided that I wanted to kind of invest in myself a little bit more. And so I went back to McKendree, didn't have enough schooling. And so I went back to McKendree and I started to work in their terminal program. And I earned an EdS degree in curriculum design and instruction, and then was working towards my EdD in the same category. So for curriculum design and instruction, I completed all of my coursework. But ultimately, unfortunately, I'm an ABD guy. So I have everything but the final dissertation piece. And so I'm proud of my 4.0, but ultimately, just couldn't pull it off in the end. Life kind of happens, as you know, things are unexpected. And hopefully, maybe at some point in time, I might get called back to that. But that's kind of my background.
Okay. So growing up in North St. Louis, you ended up at Concordia Seminary in basically central St. Louis, right there in the Central West End. So, how did you get from being a middle school athletic director to at one of the institutions of higher learning in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod?
Yeah, no, great question. So it's kind of a nice little story, and honestly, I really think that God put this opportunity in front of me and opened this door to say, "Hey, Jamie, this is something that you really need." Basically, how I got to Concordia Seminary is God again was opening doors and inviting me pretty much to enter His world a little bit more deeply, and my father was going through battling cancer. He battled cancer for about 2 years until he passed away in the summer of 2018. And at that point in time in my life, I could feel that my faith was diminishing. When he passed away over the summer, I was angry, I was upset, I was hurt, all of those emotions and things. And I needed God to kind of just come to me. I needed a mission. I needed a calling. I needed a strong faith community that surrounded me. And I'm not kidding you, Pastor Blonsky. Within less than a week after he passed, I got a phone call from Concordia Seminary offering an interview opportunity for this particular position. I had a conversation with a few people here on campus, loved what I was hearing, felt a drawing to this place, and was blessed enough to get this job offered to me. And ever since then, it's just been an absolute joy to be a part of it and to serve everyone here, not only the student side of things, but also the faculty and staff. And so there's been opportunities here that I did not expect. And we can absolutely talk about that here in a little while, but I truly feel that God intervened in my life at a point in time that was really crucial for me, and that's why I am here.
Yeah, he has a way of doing that, doesn't he? He kind of is behind the scenes shaping us when you with all your education and your school experience, and then it says, "All right, now you're ready. Here's what I want you to do,"
Yeah.
and it's like that came out of left field. I had no idea I was going to end up here because you work in a beautiful place. I went to school there late 80s and graduated in 95. So it hasn't changed all that much.
No, not
Amazing
really.
how that works. It's still a beautiful place. If you're in St. Louis, I encourage everyone to go and visit and walk the campus. It's a beautiful place. So what is it that you actually do at the seminary?
Yeah, so I am technically the curriculum design and development specialist. I deal with a lot of online programs predominantly. I also support the residential side of things. I'm big with professional development for faculty. And like we talked about earlier, when you were here actually on campus, I coach soccer. And again, that was a blessing that I completely thought was over. That chapter was done in my life, but I was wrong. Again, God intervened on some things, and there's absolutely stories behind that. But I am technically the curriculum person and the soccer coach here at Concordia.
And I want to talk about how curriculum has changed. The seminary actually has been a seminary since 18 what, 1839, I think it was, the founding way back when. And obviously you may not have a whole lot of knowledge in how it originally was, although you've got a replica of the original school building on the campus. But uh, that whole concept of online education, it certainly is. It's with us to stay ever since 2000. But it was something that I think the seminary was doing even before that with Delto. Um,
Yes.
the whole distance learning thing, and it was starting to come into its own. And so, what why do you think God wanted you specifically to do this? That's the question I was kind of getting at. We're going to get to the specifics maybe a little bit later, but why do you think God wanted you specifically to get into this?
Yeah, from my perspective, my educational philosophy is very relational. And to me, that is clutch in any kind of arena that you are in, as far as a teacher student or even an adult type learning situation. You have to have good relationships. You have to be willing to invest in people. You have to be genuine. You have to be authentic, and you have to be present. And to me, that is a very Christian thing. I believe, there's certain things that happen in life, and God puts you in a situation, and you can either make the best and make that situation as fruitful as it can be, or, that cannot happen. And so ultimately, it is, as an individual, your decisions and your behavior that impact others. I firmly believe in that. And I just feel that, not to brag or anything, I like to think that I'm somewhat of a humble person, but I feel like I have a good personality for that. I always like to keep my door open. I try to be as welcoming and hospitable as I possibly can. And to me, that is big. That speaks volumes to people, not only Americans, but international individuals as well. And it's a respect thing is really what it boils down to. And so I feel that is a very Christian core component to our values.
I was thinking the irony of you saying I always keep my door open, and then right behind you there's a closed door.
There's
But
a
we
big
get
sign
that,
on it that says "Do not disturb" too.
yeah, I get that. But it's interesting because I think a lot of people have this preconceived notion of what a seminary is. A bunch of guys go to school and they read the Bible and they learn how to preach, and that is something that I think it surprises people just how relational the education is. And it has been pretty much, well, since Jesus started the church, it's always been about relationships, having a relationship with somebody. I'm so glad to hear that because it is an important aspect of you're basically, for the vast majority of the students that you have are going to be pastors someday. But you also there's a wide range of programs that are available at Concordia Seminary. So what are some of the education programs that Concordia Seminary does these days that you kind of got your hands in?
Ooh, so I predominantly deal with a lot of the online, more hands-on with that. It's the SMP program, the Specific Ministry Pastor program. That is probably our dominant presence in the online world. We've also picked up the EIIT program, which has become more of a part of the seminary and is an institution in promoting that. The EIIT program is Ethnic Immigrants of Institute of Theology. And so that looks at first generation immigrants that are here in the country that have a flock of individuals that are following them already. They are English language learners. A lot of times they speak multiple different languages, and English is not one of them. But that is obviously how they communicate with us, because that's how that works here in America. But if they have a flock of individuals that are willing to lift them up and train them in theology, specifically Lutheran theology, and they have a LCMS church that's willing to sponsor and sees promise in these young men and women, that they bring them to our seminary and they learn online. It's kind of follows the same path as well as the ODS program that you're now a part of. And so we have now the online deaconess studies program where it lifts up women. There are pastors just like yourself that are in place that are crucial roles in this entire program, or in all of these programs, that kind of help guide. You're the the feet on the ground, really, that kind of are the confidant, the individual that can help to steer and either, you're doing this well. These are some of the misunderstandings and misconceptions that you may have, because a lot of these individuals are coming from different backgrounds, Pentecostals, that kind of a thing. And so to learn what Lutheranism actually truly is, and to this great theology that we have. We also have a CHS, so a Center of Hispanic Studies, which is strictly all in Spanish, in which we lift up the Hispanic and the Latin American community here in the United States as well. Everybody has that same kind of format as a mentor-student relationship, and us as a seminary really depend upon your relationship with that student and your involvement. So I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done, because that is not easy work. It is not, on top of all of your ministry tasks. That is not easy work. And so thank you for all of the things that you have done and will do, and all of your fellow colleagues in that role.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate being a part of the program. It's a way to give back. I'm very much involved in getting people to consider professional church work, full-time church work, because we need it. And as I was telling I got to meet some of the first-year students at the seminary. I don't remember ever being that young. As I was looking at some of these guys that are, 22, 23 years old, but I thank them because I need their help. They need to take over for me when I'm done, and I'm closer to the end than they are at the beginning. So it's very important. The online deaconess studies program, I didn't realize just how much work this was going to be, but it is exciting. Our deaconess intern here at the congregation I serve is getting her experience of the first class online, and she's loving it. And we get to talk about 2 hours every week to talk about the things that she's learning, and I just get to listen, because that's what a mentor does. We just listen. We don't try to fix anything. We just listen to them, and then we can, like you said, we can provide real world experience, and that's something that you bring into this. And I wanted to ask about that. And I consider what you do a ministry, even though technically, at least in the Lutheran Church, you're not a minister, like kind of I am, but you do a ministry. You have a ministerial position of service. What are some of the things that when they hired you, 7 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it was, that you expected, this is what it's going to be like? And then I do want to ask about some of the things that were unexpected. And I got a feeling I know what happened in 2000 is going to come into play there. But what are some of the things that you kind of knew, this is exactly what I was expecting to happen?
Yeah. So when it comes to expectations and things, I was hopeful to get involved with curriculum itself and development and designing that and really enhancing that and bringing in, whether that's new trends and approaches, bringing in some components for online learning. I knew coming into this role itself that it was going to be a dominant distance ed type feel. And I have experience in that world. At my previous institution and where I do adjunct work, they brought me into the distance ed world years ago before the COVID, hit, type of a thing. And so developing templates and classes for them, really honing those skills and things like that, learning different learning management systems, different online softwares and tools to kind of help just promote more engaging learning type styles and approaches in the online world. That was some of the work that I expected to do. And Concordia allowed me to do that, and they kind of released the reins, and I've really enjoyed my experience here learning new things, because it always changes. I mean, even in your 4 years that you will have in the online deaconess program, there will be changes and updates to things and all of that. So it's very interesting to see the evolvement is really what it is. I appreciate you calling what I do a ministry. I have I've hold that role, I as it's a reserved position, I have reverence for that itself. And so I don't think of it as the same kind of way that it sounds like you're displaying it all and sharing. I appreciate you saying that, but I look at these guys and these ladies as, just true treasures for the church, for Christ. And I want to do my best as an individual to just kind of help them succeed and thrive in this world. They're only here for a short period of time, and we can't teach them everything that they're going to need. But what are some of those key foundational, topics, tasks, behaviors, knowledge that would really be, helpful for them when they're actually out in the ministry world? And you're dealing with individuals themselves in very sensitive and emotional situations and things. And so to me, I knew that was the expectation, and I wanted to grab a hold of that and just really grapple with it. And so that is something that I was happy to see that actually happened.
So, as you're developing the curriculum, I mean, the curriculum at the seminary has not really changed in 100 and whatever years, it's 170, whatever it is. You basically, here's the Bible, here are the confessions, because we're a Lutheran church. So the seminary, we're going to teach them that, and we're going to teach them how to preach. But what were some of the things that you updated in the curriculum to meet the challenges of the modern day?
So some of the stuff that have been introduced, the institution itself, when I stepped into this role in 2018, just went through a revision for the MDiv program. They moved, I'm not quite sure exactly what they were coming from as far as a curriculum model, but they moved into more of an outcome-based model, which pretty much means these are some of the essential tasks that pastors are going to need to be able to do when they get into the field. And they took a backwards design on that, Ed. And what they did, they said, okay, well, these are the 19 outcomes. They're revising it right now. And so they're in the process of going through that revision process again. But they're saying, these are the 19 outcomes that we want our graduates to be able to exhibit. And how can we wrap and kind of develop and design our curriculum based upon those outcomes? And so what they do is they actually look at these achievements and they say, well, what are some of the assessments that we need, and how do those scaffold, as far as, because you don't know how to preach immediately when you get here. Like you said, some of these guys are, early 20s and probably have never done a whole lot of public speaking per se. And so there are some stepping stones that need to happen in order to be, a competent preacher. And so ultimately they've kind of created a very holistic set of outcomes, dealing not only with the academic side and theology, like you said, it's confessional, are you confessing Christ? But, and it's also some of the formation and the spiritual outcomes. It's, if you're not healthy and well as an individual, it's going to be very difficult to lead a congregation and support your parishioners. And so that component is in as well, as far as that list of outcomes. And they're also drawing attention to obviously preaching and teaching and worship, but there's also, church administration. Some churches are large churches, some churches are small churches, and many pastors have to wear multiple hats. And so what kind of administrative work, what kind of outreach and mission and witnessing, what type of service can they provide to their community? And so all of these components have kind of been bundled into one larger set of outcomes that the institution has really worked hard to try to achieve in all of those areas to some competent level.
I know that under people like Dale Meyer and John Johnson and now Dr. Egger, the institution is highly respected across the world. Really, it is a quality, highly respected institution of learning. But I like what I'm hearing about that of the getting at the people. The grades ultimately don't matter when you get in the pulpit. They don't really care you got an A in this class. They just want to know, basically everybody in the church is asking the same question, or it has the same request of the guy in the pulpit is, sir, we wish to see Jesus. And so they're learning the holistic you were talking about, the whole. It's not just academic. It's not just intellectual. It's the whole lifestyle of learning and being able to serve. That's a great thing to hear. Now we kind of hinted and we revolved around it a little bit, but COVID really did in 2000 that whole shutting down and going to almost all online learning. I know we did that here for a while with confirmation and the schools, and my sons were in college at the time, so they were doing online college. what are, as we come out of that, and it's been 5 years now. So what are some of the challenges you're seeing today, and how is God using you specifically to overcome some of those challenges that people in the church and in schools are facing these days?
You know, COVID itself, as unfortunate as what that was, it really was a pivot for everyone. And it was really a turning point for not only the K through 12 sector, but for higher education as well. I want to say there was some recent statistics that came out here in the United States for just this year in 2025, that for undergraduate institutions specifically, online learners surpassed residential learners, believe it or not. And so the entire world of online learning and delivering, instruction through that platform, it's becoming more popular, it's becoming more competitive, and the expectations from learners is it's growing. And so Concordia Seminary is really, they have that as their goal. We want to create very high quality, effective, and impactful distance ed programs, and we are striving towards that. Now, like you mentioned, there are challenges with that. Not everybody is excited about teaching online. It's just it's a change. It's different than a face-to-face delivery. You witnessed that through your hurdles and things at St.
Yep.
Matthew's. And so ultimately, getting individuals excited about teaching in it, distance ed, getting individuals comfortable and familiar with the different types of technology and software, because sometimes it's great when it works. It can be devastating when it doesn't.
Yep.
And so just getting people comfortable. And there are certain instructional approaches, best practices, those kinds of things when you're dealing with learners online, because it is very tempting to get distracted and to let your mind wander and to stay focused for a certain amount of time, especially in more synchronous sessions when you're in platforms like Zoom and things like that. It's there's kind of some craftiness that has to be a part of that as an instructor. And so just to kind of shift and move that the culture, the opinions, the attitudes closer towards, teaching online. That's probably the biggest challenge that this office faces. I like to try to come at it with some vigor and some energy and some enthusiasm myself. I don't know if that's always helpful. But if you can make it exciting and you can be a good role model for it, and please feel free to speak too, because you just got a taste of that not too long
Right.
ago. Um, and ultimately, what can we do as an institution? Because there is no silver bullet in education to do better, to reach individuals as far as where they're at with computer literacy
Mhm.
and that. And so ultimately, that's to me is part of the challenge and part of the fun in this job as well.
It's interesting in our own in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, which has been around since 1847. We have a legacy of using the latest technology, and it started 500 years ago, actually, with the Lutherans. Martin Luther embraced the printing press, and that's the reason we have the Western world, really. And actually, the printing press probably was invented even earlier in the East, in the Orient, anyway. But it's that the Lutherans like to embrace that technology for whatever reason. We did it well about 100 years ago with radio, with Walter A. Meyer and the Lutheran Hour, something that I knew I had personal experience with, although I never met him personally, but I did work at KFUO when it was on the campus and that's where he did the Lutheran Hour from, and I was in those same studios and television as well. And Dale Meyer, really, former president, retired president of the seminary, embraced the television aspect of technology. And it still stuns me to find pastors and teachers that will actually say this: "Oh, I don't do internet, or I don't do computers." And I was like, "Well, you're going to have to." And 2000 really proved that. People who didn't do that pretty much are kind of left in the background, because you got to embrace this stuff. This is how people do it. And we need to use it to tell them the ageless, timeless gospel of Jesus Christ, but doing that. So I appreciate that very much that you're doing that and on the cutting edge. And yes, you do bring enthusiasm, and that was what first kind of caught my attention with you is so enthusiastic about it. And I was actually born a mile outside of Silicon Valley,
Oh, yeah.
and didn't grow up there, but I did grow up with computers, and so I kind of catch that same enthusiasm. I thought I was going to go into computers for a little while, and then God got a hold of me and said, "Nah, you can play with your computers, but you're going to do this instead." And so I try to embrace the technology to
Right.
present the gospel to people. So let's kind of pivot a little bit. Use that word before, so I like that word from COVID. We did get to pivot a little bit to you professionally, a mentor, someone who guided you along. That because what I'm trying to do is to get people to see that they have these people in their lives. They may not recognize them, so if they hear about it in somebody else's life, they may say, "Oh yeah, I've got somebody like that." Who was that for you?
Yeah. First, before I move on, I just want to say, knowing Dale Meyer, he's got a perfect radio voice, and he is
Yes,
just
he
stellar.
does.
That's always been something that I admired and just enjoy listening to. So I just have to drop that nugget too, because he's got a great knack for that. But you're exactly right. There have been some very influential people in my life, and I would have to say, if I had to pick one that really truly stood out, it would have to be my first boss here at Concordia Seminary, Reverend Dr. Alan Borkerding. I don't know if you know that name. Sometimes those Lutheran circles are pretty small.
Yeah.
He was probably one of the brightest men that I've ever met. He's the only guy that I know that would read Shakespeare for his leisure, kind of a thing. But just was very straightforward, was very helpful in helping me to be able to understand how to effectively approach a problem and come up with a real world solution. He was, again, very honest with me in, when I need to let something go or when I can press and push a little bit more. Again, a very relational person, so invested. He cared. We had conversations that were genuine. We talked about each other's lives and things like that and kind of opened that door a little bit. And so, to me, he was very influential, not only in me being here, but just to mold me and be that a good role model as far as just this is the right way and a good Christian and honest and just straightforward. This is how it can be done and how it can be done well. And so I really thank him for that. He's now retired, and him and his wife Kathy are, enjoying life, and he's probably out hiking and doing all kinds of fun stuff. But I see him ever so often at some of the HLC, Higher Learning Commission, is one of our two accrediting bodies, and he is a peer reviewer for that institution. And again, very bright man, heavily utilized man in certain roles and things. And so I see him ever so often at those conferences, and it's always a joy to kind of get back in touch and just, find out what's new.
I know the name. I never had the honor of meeting him, but actually, when I was on campus, I did get to meet one of my mentors, which was Francis Rossau, who's kind of same kind of guy. He read Shakespeare. In fact, we had a group that we would sit around the table and read the plays, and then he incorporated that. He was a homiletics professor, so he taught preaching, and that's the preacher I am today is because of Rev Rosso, and he turned 100 years old this year. He's in chapel on a regular basis, and he would happen to be there, and it's interesting how the mentor it's not somebody in your field. It's it's somebody completely in from a completely different world, but that's how the church works. That's how it works in the Christian faith, is that we all have different callings, but we're still in the same family. And I love that. I think that's great. And I hope that people will be inspired to realize, yeah, you've got somebody in your life who may not be that person, they're not doing the same thing you are, but they're gonna help you so much. So I have what's called a billboard question.
Okay.
So, and I kind of even worded this so you could relate to it. I'm going to give you a billboard on the inner belt, and you know how fast they go on the inner belt.
Oh, yeah. Flying around, especially in St. Louis. Yeah.
That's right. It's sort of it's that freeway that runs out by the airport in St. Louis, and so you're only going to get the people's attention on this billboard for maybe 5 to 10 seconds.
Yep.
What is something that you would want them to know that you're going to have to really reduce this message into just a handful of words? What is something that you would put on that billboard?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because, that little snippet of time, how impactful can you be? And I would have to say, if there's a motto that I could share, it would be treat people how you would like to be treated. Again, I'm a relational person. It's a Christian core message, in my opinion. Yeah, I like to think that, I'm fair, I'm firm. Dr. Nielsen will say that I can be demanding sometimes, but it's in love and stuff. And so how can we treat people the way that we would like to be treated? And to me, if that's a message that I could share with other people and really promote, that would be it.
I've known Glenn Nielsen for a long time. His first year at the seminary was my vicarage year, so he's the one that got me out on vicarage. So we can blame him, or we can credit him, one way or the other. So maybe somebody's got a little bit different idea, but yeah, you're right. He's one of those relational people too, and has been for 30 years, so more than 30 years. So treat people how you would like them to be treated. I love it. That's going to be the title of the podcast episode. So I'm a big reader. I love to read. I actually like to read real books, printed on a page with bindings, but I also do my Kindle. If you were going to gift a couple books, say 2, 3 books, what are some of those books that you would gift to people? These could be books that you like to enjoy or that are going to help you in your calling.
Oh yeah. Love that question. And I'm kind of ready for you today, Ed. So
Great.
make it stick.
Okay.
Probably the first one that I want to kind of recommend. Ultimately, if you are in any kind of education field, whether that you're an actual educator yourself, you're a pastor that's leading Bible studies and educating adults or youth, whatever your field is, Make It Stick is a wonderful book. It comes from a cognitive scientist perspective. And so they really look at, the brain and what are some of those ways that you can teach things to help with retention, to boost memory and your ability to retrieve some of those learnings, if you want to call it, from, however long ago that was. And so if you're kind of looking to really boost just your approaches, your ideas and your knowledge about how to best deliver instruction to whoever, if it's adults, children, Make It Stick is a great book to at least get you started and to kind of connect. Because again, God made the body and it is an impressive design, honestly. And I've got a couple of them that I'm going to share with you here in a second that really kind of merge, not only the thinking part of the body, but also the physical part. So the Spark book itself, when I was going through my Ed.D. program, again, Ed.D. is a little slightly different than a PhD. PhD is probably more research based, and Ed.D. is more of a practical book, excuse me, a practical degree itself. And so when I was doing that work, again, my background is in PE and health. And so I was looking at how does physical activity promote executive cognitive function in the brain? And Spark is a great text that actually helps to make those connections. And there's a lot of examples, there's a lot of statistics and evidence that shows, well, when you're participating in cardiovascular training, whether that's, at a moderate type level or something that's a little bit more high intensity, how does that change physiologically, things in the body, chemicals, neurochemicals, hormones that actually promote neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, and making more connections and growing neurons in the brain. And so Spark itself was a very cool book just to kind of eye-open my whole approach and my whole thought process on learning itself and how the body itself is just so interconnected with what it can do, and how you can best promote your best version of yourself.
I found that to be true when I was in college. and they were making us memorize all kinds of different things as a pre-seminary student. My buddy and I, in the dorms, he lived next door. This is how we would memorize: is we would do physical things, throw a basketball back and forth, or something to that effect, or make up songs. And it's like, we could have written that book, I think, because we didn't know it was working that way, but that's exactly how we were able to memorize. And that's what we teach our kids in our confirmation programs here, is when you're doing memory work, do something physical while you're doing memory work, because getting the whole body involved is how God made us. And that it's not just about just looking at the words, it's about getting everything involved.
That's right. That's right. Appreciate you saying that, Pastor Belinsky. Really do, because it's important. It's all interconnected.
Yeah,
And
it
so
is.
that's excellent. I'm glad you guys are doing that. That makes me smile.
So, got another book, or is that just those
I
two?
have one more, and
Good.
I just, as an educator, we're going to hit all domains of learning. So we've got
Good.
the cognitive side, we've got the behavioral or psychomotor, but spark of learning. So spark of learning itself is all about the emotional or the affective piece. And so again, emotion it's a primitive thing, it's a primal thing. Everybody, when it comes to dealing with love and joy and even fear and things like that, being able to connect those emotions to learning and the instruction that you're providing can be very impactful and can
Mhm.
strengthen the memory and the information that's communicated and much more strongly if you can connect it to some kind of raw emotion. I'm not saying you're intimidating people and that kind of a thing, but ultimately emotion matters, especially in the world of learning and stuff. Because as you probably know, if you're teaching students and they're just disconnected and they're uninterested, nothing's getting through.
Right.
So how can you bring in that emotion into your delivery?
Absolutely. I mean, it works that way, not just in teaching, but also in preaching,
Absolutely.
to bring that emotion. I mean, God made us emotional creatures.
That's right.
The Bible talks about joy. It talks about fear. It talks about happiness. It talks about sadness and mourning. And this is how God communicates to us, but also through us. I'm right on there with you. And I didn't know why I was right on there with you, but this all makes much more sense now. And I'm glad that I'm on the right path with that. That's excellent. Thank you so much for that. And I will get links to those books, and so that people can explore them on their own, either online or like we're old school, like to hold those books in our hands.
That's right. That's right.
So, as I want to kind of bring us around the bend and back into the station, what's next for you? What's on your immediate horizon?
Oh man, I really don't know. My door is open. It's always open for God to kind of intervene and kind of help to direct me and where I need to go. One of my I'd like to cherish one of my ministries here. It's coaching. I thoroughly enjoy the preachers and the seminary coaching role that I have. And so regardless if it's something on the academic side and what I do in my actual vocation or my side vocation as, with the preachers and helping them promote, within their own ministries, hopefully getting into the world of sports itself. I've had a lot of past, alumni that have come out to games. I've had students that have played for me that have gone off into their own parishes that report back and say, I had this opportunity to work with either, the school that's connected to my church, to a local school or a local club in which they're able to reach not only Christians, but, non-Christians, non-believers themselves, and help to kind of open that door, not in a church type setting, but ultimately, bringing in, again, it's that relational piece. You're bringing in and you're connecting with people, and you can introduce the theology, you can introduce the
Hmm.
compassion, you can introduce the truth. And so it's, to me, I would love to see something along those kinds of lines to kind of really help uh, my players and seminarians just, really be able to branch out and spread and just witness to other people and bring them into God's light. And that would be just amazing opportunity. And if I seen it, I would snatch that up in a heartbeat.
Excellent. Well, I hope that works out for you too. And I know that God is going to continue to use you right where you are and in the future. So I thank you so much, Jamie, for agreeing to do this. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this. Again, it was a great experience. I appreciate everything that you're doing and for the invitation.
I appreciate that. So you have a great day, and we'll catch you next time.
Absolutely. Take care.
Oh, my thanks to Jamie for joining me on the podcast. I don't know if you could tell, she might have been a little bit nervous. This was the first time she's ever been on a podcast, I think is what she told me. She was so surprised when I met her a couple weeks ago and was so impressed with her enthusiasm in her chosen field and the field actually that God has put her in at Concordia Seminary. I said, I got to have her on the podcast. I want to share her story with all of you. And so she may have been a little bit nervous, but I think she did a fantastic job. And I think she's going to inspire a lot of people to reflect God's light and love in ways that they might not even have ever imagined they could. And I think that's exactly what is happening with Jamie. So thank you, Jamie, for being on the podcast today. And thank you for joining us today. The Reflection Podcast is a production of St. Matthew Lutheran Church in Hawthorne Woods, Illinois, where I am lead pastor, and we would love to have you come and visit us. You can go to our website at www.stmats.net. So that's stmatts.net, and you can start planning your visit. Find out a little bit more about us. We do a lot of things at St. Matthew. We have traditional worship, but we also have different things that we do. We have podcasts. We have Bible studies that we broadcast around the world via the internet, and our worship services are all streamed live as well. So if you find yourself in the northeast corner of Illinois, we're just outside of Chicago, about an hour's drive, less than that from O'Hare Airport. We would love to have you come and join us in person. You can always join us online at our website. We're also on all the social medias, so you can find us just about anywhere. And this podcast, we would love for you to share it with someone else. Perhaps they need to be inspired that God is leading them in an incredible adventure and direction. So share the podcast, rate it, give it a 5-star rating. That's always welcome, and a review. And that helps get us to more and more people around the world, in front of more eyes and into more ears, wherever the people get their podcast from. We're on all the platforms, and you can find the video version of the podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Your Spotify player online on your web browser will also show the video version of this podcast. So thank you so much for joining me today, and look forward to next time. You're going to find another very interesting and, we hope, inspiring message with a new guest on the Reflection Podcast. God's richest blessings to you. Talk to you next time.